Hey, what's happening? Welcome back to another episode of DB Overthinking. Before we get into the episode, I got to give a quick shout out to my Plus Ultra Don't Fretters, my top tier supporters on Patreon, Peggy Lou Who and JJ Valdez. Patreon.com/DFretter if you want to help support the channel, get access to some bonus content, and join my private Discord server. Po-fi.com/DFretter if you want to help support the channel but don't want another monthly subscription to manage. Or you could just like this video, subscribe to the page, and hit that noti bell. So let's just get right into it. Section 1 is called Confessions. I really struggle with finishing creative projects. I have too many projects on the go. I have too many ideas bouncing around in my head, and I just don't have the time or the resources to finish them all. Sometimes I'll be catching up with a friend or something like that, and they'll make like a remark about it or make a little dig about it, like,
"Oh wow, you're so creative."
or like,
"What creative thing are you working on these days?"
or something like that. And I can't help but feel judged, or at least like this insecurity will come up to the surface because, I know that I've started way more projects than I've finished. And in our culture, your body of work is only as good as the projects that you finish. What my friends, family, and even my partner find even more annoying than that is I have more ideas than I do unfinished projects. Like, I won't even be finished something before I'm like, oh, it'd be really cool is if we made this thing like this, or what if I made a song with this person, or what if I, made a little documentary over here or something like that. Like, there's always more stuff that I'd like to start, but because I haven't really finished a lot of what I've talked about, a lot of the people in my life don't even take me seriously anymore. I'm like a joke without a punchline, which honestly, I can't even blame them. It's kind of fair. Don't have the best track record. I say I'm going to do something. They'll believe it when they see it. Who knows if they'll even be watching by the time I finish it. I remember somebody really close to me essentially called me a loser and said, like, you say you're going to do all these things and then you never see it through to the end. And as much as that hurt, as much as that rattled me, that was kind of a wake-up call. I'm not grateful for what this person said. Obviously, it was really hurtful, and this had been kind of like a resentment that had built up, and they were really harsh. Part of what made it hurt so much is that I kind of knew it was true, and I've been working to prove them wrong. Not to them. I don't really care what they think, but I want to prove to myself that they're not right about me, or at least that I don't have to be that way, if that makes sense. So I'm learning to develop the skill of finishing projects, not for the approval of this person who, doesn't think much of me, but to develop my own sense of self-trust and self-confidence. Section 2 is called The Clown and the Editor. So one day I was scrolling and the algorithm sent me this video by Dr. Rachel Barr, who is a neuroscientist, content creator, and author. She was talking about the neuroscience behind why some people struggle to start or finish creative work. Dr. Barr borrows from Scott Dykers, who is the founder of The Onion, as he describes his creative process and the two halves of his creative mind, the clown and the editor. Creativity is a tag team between these two networks in your brain, the default mode network, which is the clown, and the executive control network, which is the editor. The default mode network is the daydream machine. It's for ideation, self-reflection, introspection. It's very unself-conscious. I believe this is where whimsy comes from, but I don't know that for sure. I ain't no neuroscientist. And the executive control network is the strategist, the editor, the one that kind of refines the idea and makes it into something. Creative work happens when you go from activation in the default mode network and go into activation of the executive control network. That's when things get finished. Coincidentally, for the last couple of years, I've been explaining to my students my writing process, how I write poems and how I write jokes is I use the metaphor, or I use the philosophy of finding the sculpture within the stone as a metaphor. So I kind of think of the rough idea as the stone, and the writing is chipping away at the stone until you find the good parts of it. But we're not really talking about my process right now. We're talking about something else. And the challenge for me, and I would assume for you as well if you clicked on this video, or maybe you're just looking for some background noise while you cook. What is that? Is that spaghetti sauce? Challenge is trying to find a balance between these networks that have conflicting priorities. Moving on to section 3, which is called Procrastination and Perfectionism. I have some valid reasons for why I haven't finished some of the creative projects that I've started. Business relationships ended, health problems, financial challenges. There was Pops' accident and the surgeries and the recovery time and helping out around the house and running the business and stuff like that. And one of the fantasy novel projects that I had started, I ended up realizing that I just wasn't good enough a writer to write this story yet. So it's like, okay, let's just put a pin in that, and we'll come back to it when we're better. And on top of that, I'm trying to pay the bills with a labor-intensive day job, trying to keep this channel going. I'm doing stand-up comedy, plus I'm trying to maintain healthy relationships and do normal adult chores and errands and shit. I don't really have the time or the energy for some of these more ambitious projects, even though I would love to do them. But another reason why I struggle to finish my creative works is that I put off doing the work. I can be a bit of a procrastinator, and I know that the hustle and grind culture will make it sound like procrastination is laziness or it's bad time management or whatever. But procrastination is not a time management issue, it's an emotional regulation issue. And it's funny how that'll come up, where it's like sometimes I'll schedule a whole day to work on a video or something like that, and then instead of making the video, I'll clean the entire apartment, I'll do all the dishes, I'll do the laundry, I'll go for a walk, I'll go work out, I'll scroll on Substack and tell myself that I'm doing research. And before you know it, it's like 5 p.m. and I haven't done anything for the video. This one actually happens to me a lot. Sometimes there'll be a task that we have to do or a project that we need to start. Deep down, maybe we feel like it's just slightly outside of the scope or beyond the scope of what we know our capabilities to be. Something will come up. Some negative feeling will come up. Maybe it's self-doubt. Maybe it's uncertainty. Maybe it's fear, imposter syndrome or something. And the brain doesn't like feeling those feelings. And so we scroll. We be productive by doing other stuff. We avoid those feelings by avoiding the task, and the relief that we feel from avoiding the thing, our brain kind of takes as a reward, and then we end up stuck in an avoidance loop. And the more you go around in this loop, the more ingrained this pattern of behavior becomes, and it can be really hard to go down a different pathway than the neural pathway you've forged over this repeated behavior. So maybe you don't actually feel like you can complete this project, or maybe you know that in order to finish this project, you're going to have to step outside of your comfort zone. Maybe you don't want to deal with the slog of finishing a project, as corny as it is, but maybe you don't want to go through the slog of actually finishing the project or whatever. But as corny or cliche as it is, the magic that you're looking for is in the work you're not doing. And sometimes we avoid the work that our heart desires to see finished because we don't feel like we're good enough, or we're scared that it's not going to be good enough and it won't meet the perfect vision in our minds. Call this blank canvas paralysis. BCP is where once you start a project, it's no longer perfect. You can have this perfect image in your mind, but the second you put a single stroke on the canvas, a single word on the page, it's not perfect anymore. It's been marked by your own human imperfections, and that keeps you from moving forward with the work. But perfect doesn't exist. And besides that, done is better than perfect when it comes to creative work, in my opinion. But the executive control network is deeply interwoven with perfectionism. And I feel like when the critic is kind of unchecked or it's a little too loud, it can be the thing that prevents you from starting or finishing a work because you're afraid it won't be perfect. Section 4 is called too many ideas. Something that a lot of my friends, family, and even my partner don't really get about me is that I consider a lot of creative work to just be fun. It's fun to do. The work is play for me. And there's so many things that I want to do before I die because it seems like it would be fun. In the unabridged journals of Sylvia Plath writes, I can never read all the books I want. I can never be all the people I want and live all the lives I want. I can never train myself in all the skills I want. And why do I want? I want to live and feel all the shades, tones, and variations of mental and physical experience possible in my life. And I am horribly limited. I'm not a really big Plath girly, not a girly for starters, but that quote has always kind of resonated with me because that's how it feels. There's so many things I want to do, and I've tried to do a lot of it, but I am just a human man, and I can't do it all. But I have too many ideas for fiction books and nonfiction books, scripts, videos, comedy specials. Maybe I want to do music again sometimes. And my default mode network can be a little too overactivated. You know what I mean? That's not a word. Overly active? Hyperactive. I don't know. Not a scientist. I don't know words. But I'd be clowning around a little too much, if you know what I mean. I get caught up in the first phase of this graphic a lot, where there's a lot of like joy and discovery and enthusiasm, and it's like really fun, it's really cool or whatever. Then I'll start to lose interest because, it's a little too hard, or I don't know if the work is working. With a lot of creative fields, there isn't clear indicators as to whether or not your work is improving or progressing or something like that. Like, am I getting better at stand-up? I don't know. Maybe I've gotten worse. Sometimes doing creative work can feel a little like being on the bench press and you're adding like 5 more pounds than you can lift for sure. So you're not sure if you can handle it and you don't have a spotter, but that's where the growth is. That said, if you are in a gym and you are going for a PR, if you can get a spotter, please do that for your own safety and for your own like joint sake and all that. Now that fitness advice is out of the way, I'm going to read a quote from How to Finally Make Something, an article on Substack by Scott Stevenson. Creativity ultimately means stepping forward without knowing where we're going. Unfortunately, unstructured and ambiguous tasks make us anxious. To avoid this anxiety, we constantly substitute playing the real game of creation with other activities that feel more structured, what I'll call fantasy games. Most of the time, we do this subconsciously without even recognizing it. Many of us have been doing this for almost our entire lives and will continue to do so until death unless we intervene. Making something original simply requires avoiding playing these fantasy games too often in order to play the real scary game of creation. And I recommend like reading that whole essay and going into like the different types of fantasy games that he lays out. It's really interesting. And to me, that's sort of like productive procrastination because it feels like you're doing something, or it's like you're just enjoying the high of ideation. And like maybe I know there's a lot of writers on here, so for like maybe you're really working on world building or something that isn't necessarily getting the book done, but it is like the fun part of writing a fantasy novel or something like that. Or maybe you're like me and you just like you'll start a new project, you'll start all these new projects so you can keep feeling that good feeling, that new discovery, and your previous projects get so far on the back burner it's like, are they even cooking anymore? Because when you have multiple projects, it gives you the illusion of moving forward in your creative path, but really you're just moving side to side. And this is kind of not really how I ended up going from like a musician to a poet to a YouTuber to a comedian. Like, not exactly. There's a little bit more to it than that, but it is kind of how it seems on the outside. So anyways, another quote here from Oliver Burkeman's 4,000 Weeks, Time Management for Mortals. Perhaps the most appealing way to resist the truth about your finite time is to initiate a large number of projects at once. That way you feel as though you're keeping plenty of irons in the fire and making progress on all fronts. Instead, what usually ends up happening is that you make progress on no fronts. Because each time a project starts to feel difficult or frightening or boring, you bounce off to a different one instead. You get to preserve your sense of being in control of things, but at the cost of never finishing anything important. I've tried to say this so many times, like this is probably like the 5th take on it. It's not in the script and it's a little off topic, but I do think it's worth pointing out. I don't actually think you need, I don't think there's anything wrong with daydreaming. I don't think you need to finish your projects if you are content to just chip away with them in your spare time. Like, for me, those are my fantasy novels right now, where it's like, I have all these different things that I've started and outlined in their various stages of completion, but that's just what I'm doing for fun. Like, there are some nights where, I'm exhausted from my day job. I don't have a comedy show. I'm not putting out a video that week or something. And I want to do something, but I just don't want to think about YouTube, or I just don't want to think about comedy. So I'll just work on the fantasy novels. And I think that's fine too. You know what I mean? I think hustle and grind culture will have you thinking you gotta be, finishing all these projects. You don't have to, is all I'm saying. And I think there's some wisdom in knowing when a daydream should just stay a daydream. I think the world of Milo Winters' world of Guardian could have stayed this like mental safe space for him if he didn't try to make it everybody else's problem. That wasn't the nicest way I could have said that. Like, I guess, and a more like personal example is like I have ideas for like 2 shows I want to do that are sort of inspired by like The Office or Abbott Elementary. Because I don't have a ton of experience like directing, I don't really have plans to start or finish those projects right now. Those are just ideas, and it's just fun to think about sometimes when I'm at work because I hate my job. I don't think there's anything wrong with like prolonged activation of the default mode network. I don't think there's anything wrong with clowning around, being a daydreamer, and having all these ideas. But if you want those ideas to ever come to life, you know, whether that's as a side hustle, a career path, or just so you can hold your own book in your own hand, the clown has to hand the work over to the editor at some point. Section 5 is called How to Start and How to Finish. Throughout any of my videos, when I'm talking about creative process or whatever, take what resonates, leave what doesn't. I'm not an authority. I'm just some guy with a microphone. But the first part, how to start, it's really, really simple. It's not easy, but it's simple. Just start. Step 1 is take 1 step. It's important to accept that your work isn't going to be perfect. No work of art is, and yours isn't going to be an exception to that. If you want your work to exist in the world at some point, you have to stop avoiding facing feelings of self-doubt or uncertainty and start working through those feelings. And honestly, I think that the feeling you get from finishing, like that feeling you get of holding your book in your hands, or that feeling you get watching your finished movie or listening to your song after it's been mastered for the first time or something like that, it's way better than the relief you get from avoiding that work. Like this graphic doesn't account for the joy you get when it's finally done, or the relief you get when it's finally done. I'm going off script again, but another thing about starting is that sometimes people just get overwhelmed thinking about how far they have to go. Don't focus on that. You can keep your eye on that. You gotta keep one eye. This doesn't make sense because I can't like make my eyes do 2 different things, but like you gotta keep the goal in mind, but also focus on the steps right in front of you. Like you gotta know what direction you want to go in, but worry about the steps right in front of you. And now how to finish. I can't really give prescriptive advice. Like I don't know what you're working on. I probably don't know how to do whatever it is you're working on. Like if you're working on a comic or a manga or whatever, because I know a couple of people who watch the channel are doing that. I don't know shit about that. So like I can't give you advice on that. Or maybe you're trying to design your own TTRPG. I don't play those. I know nothing. Why would I give you advice on that? So these are some general things that I'm trying to implement to help me finish some projects. Number 1, ask myself if it needs to get done and how high a priority is it. Again, if you're creating just for fun and there's like no deadlines, pressure's off. You straight up don't have to finish if you don't want to. Your worth as a person and as an artist shouldn't be gauged by how productive you are. So if your work is bringing you joy, I think that it's serving its purpose. Like I said before, my fantasy novels, I'm just kind of plugging away for fun when I can. And ideally, one day I'll be able to print out 10 copies and hand them out to friends. But other than that, like there isn't really a lot of pressure. Whereas like other things, there is kind of a higher pressure. Another example is like my next poetry book or my collection of essays, whatever you want to call that. I have sort of shelved that project for now because I'm a little bit more focused on comedy and figuring out what the fuck this YouTube channel is going to be and working on some other YouTube related stuff that I shouldn't talk about right now. Number 2, I try to break it down, trying to make bigger projects into smaller projects that kind of stack up, you know what I mean? One of the benefits and I think some of the benefits are like, 1, it's just less overwhelming that way, like instead of, there's some days where in the past I've like tried to write, record, and edit a YouTube video all in one day. You shouldn't do that. Never do that, bro. Instead I kind of break it down where it's like one day I'm, doing research. The next day, I'm working on the outline. The next day, I'm writing the script. The next day, I'm filming. The next day, I'm editing. Wow, really sounds like a full-time job. So breaking it down like that, the work feels less overwhelming, and I get access to that feeling of completing a project or doing the job more often, which kind of leads into number 3, like have some kind of reward system. Like, all I really do for myself is just kind of like I can be kind of hard on myself. So all I really do when I finish one of those stages of like making a video is I just like, I'm like, good for me. Now you can watch an episode of Daemons from the Shadow Realm or whatever. Number 4 is have accountability partners. It takes a village to raise an artist. And I think, especially for writers, it can be like this very solitary, lonely path that we walk on. And I notice I've always had this theory, and I've always had this theory that a lot of times why you see so many like TikTok authors kind of crashing out or acting the fool, it's because it's so solitary and so lonely. They don't have people they can talk to about their frustrations, so they build up and they snap, or they don't have someone calling them out for like, hey man, like maybe don't do that, or whatever. I think the isolation leads to some pretty wild behavior. And like for me, in a lot of stuff that I do, I've realized like I can't do it all alone. So like if you follow me on Instagram or whatever, you probably see that I like produce a lot of comedy shows in my area now. I don't do that alone. I have like a small production company that helps me with that stuff, and we're working on some YouTube stuff that I'm not supposed to talk about right now. Sorry, got excited. But yeah, it's like the creative journey can be a lonely one, but it doesn't have to be. And so have an accountability partner who's like checking in with you on your progress, or you're like hyping each other up, you're supporting each other. That can make a world of difference in whether or not you finish your projects. I'm not interested in trying to satisfy our culture's like appetite for more and more and more content. I am trying to finish more projects and be a little bit more intentional about what I say I'm going to do in order to build my own sense of trust in myself as an artist. In the last episode, we were kind of talking about art gurus and content coaches, and sometimes they're talking about like, and they'll try to sell you this like method on getting clients, and this is how you can make 6 figures a year selling your paintings, or this is how you optimize your space or your lifestyle or whatever, to pump out more art and to make more sales and all that stuff. And I've been saying it a lot, but we're not content machines. This video isn't meant to be like, this is how you finish your project so you can like be another cog in the machine, or you can be a content machine and churn out all this slop. Isn't meant to be for people to be like, this is how you optimize your creativity and your productivity. This is about like, this is for people who are like, oh, I don't finish anything I set out to finish. It's like, okay, I think the first thing to ask yourself is like, do you need to? And then if the answer is yes, it's like, okay, what's stopping you from starting or finishing or whatever? I think the answers kind of make it pretty simple, because I think that your work is worth doing, and I think that your work deserves to exist out there in the world. And for all you know, you could be writing somebody's favorite book or working on somebody's favorite movie, album, TV show, I don't know. And it would be a shame if it never found its way to them. And that's pretty much everything I have for this episode. So thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for listening. Patreon.com/CFreddy if you want to help support the channel, get some bonus content, join the private Discord server. If you join for free, you get access to my monthly newsletter, checking in. Ko-fi.com/CFred if you want to support the channel, but you don't want another monthly subscription to manage. Or you can just like this video, subscribe to the page, and hit that noti bell. I'm going to be kind of experimenting. I'm going to be trying some things that might be a little silly in the next few months, because I'm still trying to find my creative voice as a content creator. So bear with me. But yeah, thank you so much for watching, and thank you. And I don't know if this video is going to get any views or whatever, because I feel like when it's not book drama, I just don't. And that's okay. It's kind of frustrating, but what I'm trying to say is like, I am truly grateful for people who watch this channel and listen to me talk about whatever. It does mean a lot to me. I know I can be kind of like dour. It really does mean a lot to me. So yeah, I appreciate y'all, and y'all have a good one. Peace out.